stand together for our doxology.
Our invitation hymn is 218, if you'd like to turn to that. 218. Last week, I told you that Jesus died, and in his death he collected the wages of sin. And then to the Thessalonians and to us, he says that the Christians who have died have just simply fallen asleep. And that when Christ comes again, that we will be caught up with him, and that those who have fallen asleep, he will bring with him when he comes back. So he's trying to deal with the problems that the Thessalonians have with the second coming. So now here in the 5th chapter, he starts talking about the times and the seasons, when the times, when is all this going to take place, basically. Let me read chapter 5, beginning at verse 1. Now as to the periods and times, brothers and sisters, you have no need of anything to be written to you, for you yourselves know full well that the day of the Lord is coming just like a thief in the night. While they are saying peace and safety, then sudden destruction will come upon them like labor pains upon a pregnant woman, and they will not escape. But you, brothers and sisters, are not in darkness, so that the day would overtake you like a thief. For you are all sons of light and sons of day. We are not of the night, nor of darkness. So then let's not sleep as others do, but let's be alert and sober. For those who sleep, sleep at night, and those who are drunk, get drunk at night. But since we are of the day, let's be sober, having put on the breastplate of faith and love, and as a helmet, the hope of salvation. For God has not destined us for wrath, but for obtaining salvation through our Lord Jesus Christ, who died for us, so that whether we are awake or asleep, we will live together with him. Therefore encourage one another and build up one another, just as you are also doing. He's saying, I don't really need to tell you about the times. apparently, we get the impression from this whole discourse on the second coming, back in the 4th chapter, beginning at the 13th verse, and then down through this 11th verse of the 5th chapter, that Paul is covering ground that he's already preached to them about, but it left some of them with some thoughts and some confusion about what they should expect or when they should expect it to happen. And so he's explaining a little bit more. And the reason that he says, I don't have any need of anything to write to you about this, because I've already told you, and this is what you already know, that the day of the Lord is coming like a thief in the night. Jesus talked about that in the 24th chapter of the Gospel of Matthew. Several things in that 24th chapter of Matthew deal with the coming of the age and the coming of Christ. But beginning at verse 36, Jesus himself says, no one knows about that day or hour, not even the angels in heaven nor the Son, but only the Father. And as it was in the days of Noah, so it will be at the coming of the Son of Man. For in the days before the flood, people were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, and up to the day Noah entered the ark, and they knew nothing about what would happen until the flood came and took them all away. What was going on in the days of Noah was just everyday life. The people were going about their business. They were living, they were doing the things that they ordinarily do. It says they were eating and drinking, and there were weddings, and they were giving in marriage, and they had no clue. Which is sort of ironic, because Noah had preached the whole time that he was building the ark. Was it 200 years that he worked on the ark? 100 years? A long period of time, as far as our minds are concerned, that he was building this ark. And the people thought he was crazy. Here this man out in the desert building this huge monstrosity that he says is going to float when the rain comes. It had never rained on the earth until it rained in the days of Noah. There had never been rain. So when he talked about rain coming and the water building up enough to lift that boat off of the ground, they thought he was crazy. They just thought he had lost his mind. But there they were, eating, drinking, probably making fun of the old man out in the desert building the boat. And then the rain came. And it said they didn't know anything up until the day Noah entered the ark, and they knew nothing about what would happen until the flood came and took them all away. And here's the sentence: that is how it will be at the coming of the Son of Man. We're not going to have an ark. We're not going to have another flood. He's promised us that. But we'll just be going about our daily routines, our daily normal days' work, or activities, or events that we're participating in. He says people will say peace and safety. and then comes destruction upon them. That's how it's going to be. That's what Paul is saying here to the Thessalonians. He says, you don't need anybody to write to you about these things, because the day of the Lord is coming just like a thief in the night. Jesus talks about that as well. He says if people had known the day that the thief was going to come, they would have set special watches. They would have put people on alert, and they would have been prepared. But they didn't. So the thief comes when we least expect it. I told you last week there were two groups of people. And again, there are two groups of people. The two groups of people are basically the same as they were last week. Last week I told you there was a group of people that were saved and that would be ready when the Lord came, and that there were a group of people that were lost and they would be lost when the Lord came. This time, the two groups of people are described here in this passage in Thessalonians. Thessalonians, the 5th chapter. He says, there are people that are in the light. Verse 5, he says, you are all sons of light and sons of day. So there are a group of people that are in the light. There are people who are of the day. But verse 5 also says that not everyone is like that, because there are some who are of the night and of darkness. They're of night and of darkness. And they do the things that they do under the cover of darkness. And they do the things that they do when they think nobody else is watching. And they think they can get away because nobody sees. But he says that's not the way you are. You, brothers and sisters, are not in darkness. We're not of the night. So let's not sleep as others do. The first group of people is in the light. They're described as being awake. They're described as being sober. They're alert to the signs of the time. Or maybe not even the signs of the time, but they are aware in their own hearts and in their own minds and in their own thinking that there's going to come a day when Jesus is going to come back. What he's basically saying is that the Christian life is not one of deception. The Christian life is not one of underhandedness. It's not a life of backstabbing and secret deals, but it's open and above board, letting the light of Jesus shine through your life. Letting others see Jesus in you, in the way that you live. But maybe the real key is this, that we live our lives expecting Jesus to return at any moment. See, when I read that about the days of Noah, they weren't expecting destruction, even though Noah had been preaching that destruction was coming. They didn't pay attention. look at verse 4. It says, but you, brothers and sisters, are not in darkness, so that the day of the Lord would overtake you like a thief. Because you're living in the light, and you're living expectantly for Jesus to come back. There was a song back in the 90s. I think the name of it was One Day Too Late. One of the verses says, you tried to live the best you could. You tried to do the things you should. But when it came to serving God, you said, I still have time to wait. Now it's all turned around. Time for Jesus now you've found. How sad to think that you found the time, but one day too late. Part of that being ready is to be properly clothed. In the 22nd chapter of the book of Matthew, Jesus tells a parable about a king that had prepared a wedding feast. The whole first 14 verses of the 22nd chapter of Matthew talks about the kingdom of heaven is like a king who prepared a wedding banquet for his son. He sent his servants out to those who had been invited, told them to come. The banquet was ready. They refused to come. So he sent some more servants, and he sent the servants out again, and he told them, I have prepared my dinner. My oxen and fattened calf have been butchered, and everything is ready. Come to the wedding banquet. It says they paid no attention. Went off, one to his field, another to his business. The rest of them seized the servants and mistreated them and killed some of them. The king was enraged, and he sent his army and destroyed those murderers and burned their city. And then he said to his servants, the wedding banquet is ready, but those I invited did not deserve to come. Go to the street corners and invite to the banquet anyone you find. So the servants went out into the streets and gathered all the people they could find, both good and bad. And the wedding hall was filled with guests. The king came in to see the guests, and he noticed a man there who was not wearing wedding clothes. And he said, friend, how did you get in here without wedding clothes? And the man was speechless. And the king told the attendants, tie him hand and foot, throw him outside into the darkness where there will be weeping and grinding of teeth. We've got to be properly clothed to participate in the wedding banquet of the King. You know what that proper dress is? It's not suit and tie. It's not anything like this that we put on or take off. Paul tells us, since we are of the day, let's be sober, having put on the breastplate of faith, the breastplate of faith and love, and as a helmet, the hope of salvation. He doesn't give the full list of the armor of God there, because he's not talking about us being in a battle with the enemy. He's talking about us being ready when the Lord comes again. And we have got to be clothed with the faith and the salvation and the helmet of salvation that comes to us and is available to all who come to Jesus Christ. He died. Go back to last week's. He died. Paul describes his demise as a death. But the Christians have fallen asleep in Jesus because they have been clothed with the breastplate of faith and love and the helmet of salvation. Now, we may be asleep when he comes. We may be alive when he comes. But will we be prepared for his coming? Two groups of people again. Those who are and those who are not. Which group are you in? We need to know. You need to know. And you need to decide. I think that Paul lived his life from the time he met Christ, was confronted by Christ on the road to Damascus. He knew that he had been living wrongly, going in the wrong direction. I believe from that point on, he expected Jesus to come back before he died. And I believe that we need to regain that attitude. I think we need to live our lives today expecting the imminent return of the Savior. Because I think that would change a lot of people's attitude. And I think it would change a lot of business deals, a lot of the way that people live and conduct themselves on a day-to-day basis. If we lived expectantly, Jesus might come. While we're still living. I know that's sort of hard because it's been, round figures, it's been almost 2,000 years. But promises are sure. Promises are true. It is going to be trumpet sound, a shout, and as the song that Brittany picked out, Are You Ready? about the angels. The Bible talks about the angels being assigned to the four corners of the earth. Bring in those who are ready. We need to live if he might come before service is over. Ready? Father, I thank you for the day. I thank you for your promises that are true and are sure. Help us to live expectant lives, expecting your return, expecting you come rescue us from this world of sin, to take us to eternity. Help us to be clothed in faith, salvation. Help us to be clothed in your Son, Jesus. So that when we stand for you, you'll see our blood-covered soul, not the splotches and stains of our sin. Help us to be faithful all our ways. I pray in the name of